The desert stretched endlessly, a golden ocean swallowing everything it touched. The sun was merciless that day, pouring its fire over the land until even the air shimmered like molten glass. Somewhere in that furnace of silence, a woman staggered, her lips cracked, her skin burned, and her voice lost to the dry wind. Her name was Evelyn Shaw, a 30-year-old woman who once believed she could tame the desert with her will. But by the third day without water, the desert had proven her wrong. Her canteen had long run dry. Her horse, her only companion, lay still a few miles back, its ribs jutting through the hide, claimed by the heat. Now it was just her, the wind, and the memory of her father's voice echoing in her mind. "Never go searching in the West Dunes, Eve," he'd said before he disappeared 6 months ago. "There are things buried there best left untouched." She hadn't listened, because when a daughter's heart still beats for a missing father, warnings sound like whispers in the wind. Her vision blurred. The sky twisted into mirages, rivers that vanished when she reached them, and shadows that danced like ghosts. She fell to her knees, her breath ragged. Her fingers clawed at the sand as if she could dig water from beneath it. Then, when her strength gave out completely, she collapsed face first into the dunes. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was the silhouette of a man, a tall, muscular figure against the dying sun, standing beside a horse painted in white dust. When Evelyn awoke, she was no longer beneath the sky. The air was cooler, smelling faintly of smoke and sagebrush. A flickering fire glowed nearby, and she could hear the murmur of voices, soft, rhythmic, speaking in a tongue she didn't know. She tried to sit up, but her body trembled. Her throat was so dry that even breathing hurt. "Easy," a deep voice said in English, accented but calm. "You drink first." A hand held a clay cup to her lips. Cool water touched her mouth, and she gasped, then drank greedily until the cup was taken away. She blinked, and her eyes adjusted to the dim light. The man before her was unlike anyone she'd ever seen. His skin was bronzed by sun, his long black hair tied with strips of leather and beads. His chest was bare, muscles marked with tribal paint and dust. A necklace of carved bone rested against his sternum. He looked like something carved out of the desert itself. Where am I?" Evelyn whispered. "In our land," he replied. "The desert took you, but she gave you back." She didn't know what that meant, but the seriousness in his tone silenced her questions. He rose to his full height, towering over her. "I am Dakota of the Apache," he said simply. "You crossed into our hunting ground. We found you near death." Evelyn looked around. They were inside a small shelter made of hides and brush, lit by firelight. Outside, faint figures moved, men and women tending fires, sharpening blades, caring for horses. An entire Apache camp hidden deep within the dunes. "I was searching for someone," she managed to say, Dakota's dark eyes fixed on her. "A man?" She nodded weakly. "My father. He came here months ago. He was a prospector, or maybe something more. But he never returned." For a moment, Dakota said nothing. The firelight flickered over his face, and his expression changed, something between recognition and caution. "Many white men come to the desert," he said finally. "Few return. The land buries greed as easily as bones." Her eyes filled with tears. He wasn't greedy. He just wanted to find a way to live, to make a home for us. Dakota didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the entrance of the shelter, lifting the flap of hide to look out at the moonlit dunes. "The desert doesn't forget," he murmured. "If he's here, she will tell us." Then he turned back to her. "Rest. You cannot search for the dead when you're still fighting to live." Evelyn lay back, her body trembling as exhaustion pulled her down again. Outside, the drums began to beat softly steady, like a heart echoing through the night, and as she drifted into uneasy sleep, she thought she heard the desert whisper her father's name through the wind. Evelyn woke to the sound of wind whispering through canvas. Morning light filtered through the seams of the shelter, turning everything gold. Her throat no longer burned, but her body still felt heavy, as though the desert had taken something from her she could never get back. Outside, she could hear laughter, children's voices, and the rhythmic clatter of tools. She pushed herself up and found a folded cloth beside her, freshly cleaned and smelling faintly of sage. Her old dress had been replaced by soft deerskin clothing, stitched carefully by hands that knew kindness even in a harsh land. When she stepped outside, the brightness nearly blinded her. A small Apache village stretched across the dunes, its lodges half buried against the wind. Smoke curled upward from cooking fires. Women ground maize. Men mended spears. Yet all movement seemed to pause when they noticed her, the pale stranger in their midst. Dakota was standing near the corral, brushing his horse. The light caught his skin like bronze, and the muscles in his arms flexed with every motion. When he saw her, he nodded slightly but did not smile. "You're strong enough to walk," he said. "Good. The desert didn't win." Evelyn drew closer. "I owe you my life. If you hadn't found me," he cut her off gently. "The desert chose that." "Not me," she frowned, unsure what he meant. "Then thank the desert," she said softly. "But I still need to find my father." Dakota stopped brushing the horse. His dark eyes narrowed, studying her. "You speak of him again. Why do you believe he still breathes?" Evelyn's fingers tightened around the edge of her sleeve. "Because I can feel it. He wouldn't leave me. Not without a sign. I just need to know where to look." He looked toward the horizon, where the dunes met the jagged red cliffs. Signs in the desert are dangerous things. They lead you places you may not return from. "Then I'll take that risk," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, Dakota. You know this land. Help me." He turned fully to her now, eyes deep and unreadable. "Why should I? The last time a white man came here, he brought guns. Promised peace, but left death instead." Evelyn swallowed hard. "My father wasn't like that. He was gentle. He wanted to find water beneath the sand. Said he'd make life bloom where no one believed it could." Something flickered in Dakota's gaze, something almost like memory. He said nothing for a long time, then finally nodded once. "Eat, then come with me. I'll show you something." They rode together later that afternoon. The sun hung low, the heat shimmering like a veil. Dakota's horse moved easily through the shifting dunes while Evelyn clung behind him, her hands gripping the worn leather strap. After an hour of silence, he pointed ahead. "There," he said. A jagged canyon opened before them, vast, silent, and red as old blood. Wind whistled through its cracks, carrying the faint sound of something almost like singing. "This place," Dakota said quietly, "is where the desert remembers. My people call it Kahana Nitsa, the Canyon of Echoes. If your father came this way, the wind will still carry his story." They dismounted. Evelyn stepped toward the edge, her boots crunching over sand and stone. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Beautiful," Dakota said, "and cruel." Evelyn knelt, running her fingers over the sand. Something caught her eye, a small piece of metal half buried in the ground. She brushed it clean. It was a pocket watch, tarnished and broken, with her father's initials engraved faintly on the back. Her breath caught. This was his. Dakota's expression hardened. "Then your father did come here." She turned to him, heart pounding. "You see? I was right. He's alive, he must be." Dakota looked away, his jaw tense. "Or he never left," he said softly. Before she could respond, a sudden gust of wind rose from the canyon, howling like a cry. The sand lifted in spirals, and for a moment Evelyn swore she heard a voice low, distant, calling her name from below. Evelyn. She stumbled back, eyes wide. Did you hear that? Dakota's hand went to his knife. The canyon speaks. It remembers all who have fallen. But it said my name, she whispered. It was him? It had to be. Dakota stepped closer, his voice firm but calm. Whatever the desert shows you, don't trust it too quickly. The dead speak loud here. She looked down once more into the depths of the canyon. The wind had stilled, but her father's voice still echoed faintly in her heart. The desert was quiet that evening, too quiet. The kind of stillness that carried weight, as if the sands themselves were listening. Evelyn stood near the edge of the canyon, her fingers tight around the broken pocket watch. The initials engraved on the back JS were faint but undeniable. Her father's mark. Dakota watched her silently, his dark hair lifted by the wind. If your father came here, he said finally, the desert kept him for a reason. Evelyn turned to him, her eyes filled with stubborn light. Then I'll find out why. The warrior said nothing more. Instead, he led her down a narrow path carved into the rock. The canyon walls rose high on both sides, glowing deep crimson under the sinking sun. The air grew cooler as they descended, and the wind carried strange murmurs, soft, whispering sounds that seemed almost human. At first, Evelyn thought it was her imagination. But then she heard it again, words faint and broken, like fragments of a prayer. Do you hear that? She asked. Dakota nodded. The canyon speaks. It carries the voices of those who died here. Then maybe one of them is my father, she whispered. He gave her a long look, one that seemed to hold both warning and sympathy. Or something that wears his voice. They reached the canyon floor. It was scattered with stones, bones, and shards of old iron remnants of wagons and tools swallowed by time. Evelyn knelt near a half-buried campfire ring, brushing away dust. Beneath it, she found the charred remains of paper, a journal page, brittle and blackened. Only a few words could still be read. Water lies beneath the red cliffs. Dig, her pulse quickened. He was here. He was close to something important. Dakota crouched beside her. Your father sought water? Yes, he said he'd heard of an ancient well beneath the desert. He believed he could find it and bring life back to the land. Dakota's gaze darkened. Many have searched for that well. My people call it Nel Datna, the breath of the earth. It gives life to the pure of heart and takes it from the greedy. Evelyn clutched the watch tightly. He wasn't greedy. He just wanted to survive. Dakota rose, looking toward the canyon's far wall. Then maybe he found it. Come. They crossed through shadow until they reached a stone archway hidden behind a tumble of rocks. Carvings covered the stone symbols Evelyn didn't recognize, spirals and suns and figures kneeling beside rivers. Dakota brushed his fingers over them with reverence. This is older than any of us, he said quietly. The desert's first stories. A faint glimmer caught Evelyn's eye. Between two stones, a thin stream of water trickled out clear and pure, vanishing into the sand. Her breath caught. Dakota! This is it. He knelt and touched the stream. The water was cold, impossibly so. It's real, he murmured. He must have found it. Evelyn felt tears fill her eyes. Then where is he? Dakota's hand closed around hers. Evelyn! But before he could speak, the wind roared suddenly through the canyon, swirling sand and voices around them. Evelyn turned sharply and saw a figure standing across the stream. A man, tall, thin, draped in torn cloth and shadow. His face was hidden, but his stance, something in it, made her heart twist. Father? She breathed. Dakota drew his knife. Stay back. The figure stepped closer. His movements were slow, unnatural. The wind howled again, carrying a voice that made her blood run cold. "Eve, leave this place." Her knees weakened. "It's him. He's alive." Dakota moved in front of her, his muscles tense. "That's no living man," he said sharply. "That's what the canyon keeps." The figure stopped at the edge of the stream, and for an instant Evelyn saw his face in the dim light. It was her father, but his skin was pale as dust, his eyes empty as the desert sky. Then, just as quickly, the wind surged and he was gone. Evelyn gasped, clutching the watch. "He's trying to tell me something. He wants me to follow." Dakota turned to her, voice firm but low. "If you cross that water, there is no coming back." She met his eyes, her own filled with trembling fire. "Then I'll go as far as it takes." The canyon grew silent once more, as if holding its breath. And in the distance, beneath the whispering wind, the desert began to hum low and deep, like the sound of something ancient awakening beneath the sand. The wind died as suddenly as it had come, leaving behind an eerie silence that pressed against the skin. The figure of her father had vanished, swallowed by the shimmering air above the stream. Only the faint echo of his voice remained. "Eve, leave this place." Drifting like smoke. Evelyn's heart pounded. She stared at the spot where he had stood, her breath coming in quick bursts. "He was here, Dakota. You saw him." Dakota's jaw tightened. The firelight from his torch flickered across the stone carvings. "I saw a shadow," he said. "The desert plays tricks on those who carry grief. It shows what you long for most." She turned on him, tears cutting through the dust on her cheeks. "No, that was him. He was warning me. There's something here, something my father found, and the desert won't let him go." Dakota's eyes softened, but his tone stayed steady. "You speak of the breath of the earth. It is not meant for men to find. My people tell stories of springs that whisper, of men who drink and are never seen again." Evelyn clutched the broken pocket watch tightly, the faint ticking inside it mocking her. "Then I have to see it. If he found it, maybe I can bring him peace." Dakota sighed, lowering his head for a moment before lighting another torch. "You are stubborn, woman of the dust," he said quietly. "But so was your father." Her eyes widened. "You knew him?" He hesitated. Then, slowly, he nodded. "He came to our lands last winter. He said he sought water for his people. I warned him the desert keeps what it gives. He didn't listen." Evelyn's voice trembled. "What happened to him?" "He went into the canyon alone. We heard the earth breathe that night. When we came here at dawn, the sand was wet and he was gone." Her knees weakened, but she forced herself upright. "Then that means he found it." Dakota met her gaze, his own filled with stormlight. "Or it found him." They followed the stream deeper into the canyon. The walls narrowed until the sky above became a thin sliver of blue. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the rocks, pulsing with light that came from nowhere. The air grew colder with every step. At the end of the passage, the canyon opened into a hidden hollow. Water dripped from the stones above, gathering into a small pool that shimmered with impossible clarity. The ground around it was soft, covered in pale sand that glowed under the torchlight. Evelyn stopped, unable to breathe. The pool was alive. It shimmered with ripples, though no wind touched it, and faint whispers rose from its depths. "This is it," she whispered. "The breath of the earth." Dakota nodded slowly. "You found what your father sought." She stepped closer. The whispers grew louder, soft, melodic, almost like her father's voice calling her name. She knelt by the edge and looked into the water. At first she saw only her reflection. Then, beneath it, another face appeared, her father's, eyes filled with sorrow. "Eve," the reflection whispered. "Leave, it binds the soul. The desert feeds on thirst. Tears welled in her eyes. I can't leave you here. The reflection's lips trembled. Then you will join me. Dakota's hand shot out, gripping her arm. Don't listen. It's not him, it's the desert speaking through what's left of him. She turned to him, her voice breaking. You don't understand. He's all I have left. The water pulsed brighter, and the whispers turned to cries. The ground trembled. Sand poured from the canyon walls like a living thing. Dakota pulled her back, but she fought him, desperate to touch the water. Evelyn, stop! He roared. A blinding light erupted from the pool, throwing them both to the ground. When she opened her eyes, the water was gone, only dry, cracked earth remained. The whispers had ceased. The air hung heavy with silence. Dakota rose slowly, his chest heaving. It's gone, he said. The desert has taken it back. Evelyn stared at the empty hollow, her hands shaking. Then he's gone too. Dakota looked at her, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. No, not gone, freed. She clutched the pocket watch to her chest. It no longer ticked. For the first time in months, Evelyn felt something new in her heart, not despair, but stillness. The kind that comes when the desert decides a soul's journey is over. As they turned to leave, the wind stirred again, carrying one last whisper through the canyon. Thank you, my little Eve. She froze, tears streaming freely now. Dakota placed a steady hand on her shoulder. The desert remembers, he said quietly. And now so will you. They walked out together beneath the rising moon, leaving the hollow behind its silence as deep and eternal as the desert itself. The desert wind blew colder that night. The canyon lay silent behind them, swallowed by moonlight and mystery. Evelyn walked beside Dakota, her face streaked with dried tears, the broken pocket watch clutched tightly in her hand. Each tick that had once brought comfort was gone. Its silence was now heavier than the desert itself. They moved toward the Apache village, their torches flickering like fragile stars against the vast dark. Neither spoke for a long time. It was Dakota who finally broke the silence. The desert took what it wanted, he said quietly. Your father's soul is free. That is the only peace left in these lands. Evelyn stopped, her boots sinking into the sand. You don't understand. He was trying to bring life here. He believed this desert could bloom again. Dakota turned to her, his long black hair catching the faint glow of firelight. The desert does not need saving. It teaches balance. It gives only when you respect it. She looked up at him, her voice trembling. And if I don't stop? If I keep looking for what he found? He studied her for a long time, his expression unreadable. Then it will take you too. When they reached the village, the people gathered around, whispering. The chief, an older man with silver hair and deep-set eyes, approached them. He looked at Evelyn, then at Dakota. You went to the canyon, the chief said in Apache, his tone low and grave. Dakota bowed his head slightly. She sought her father. The desert showed her what it wished her to see. The chief's eyes lingered on Evelyn. And what did it show you, white daughter of the sand? Evelyn hesitated. A pool of water that could give life. Or take it. My father tried to claim it. Now he's gone. The old man nodded solemnly. The breath of the earth does not belong to man. It breathes for the land. To disturb it is to make the desert weep. He turned to Dakota. You have brought her back. The land will decide what debt remains. Evelyn frowned. Debt? Dakota's gaze darkened. When the desert gives life, it demands balance. You were taken from death, Evelyn Shaw. That means something or someone will pay its price. Her heart tightened. You think my father's death was the cost of my life? No, Dakota said softly. I think the desert isn't done yet. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. The whispers of the canyon still echoed in her mind, calling her name. She rose quietly and stepped outside her shelter. The moon hung pale over the dunes, and the wind hummed through the brush like an old song. Dakota sat by a dying fire, sharpening his blade. He didn't look up when she approached. "You should rest," he said. "I can't," she replied. "Every time I close my eyes, I see him. I see the canyon. It's like it's calling me back." He finally met her gaze. His eyes were dark, filled with both strength and sorrow. "That's how it begins. The desert whispers to those it wants to keep." Evelyn knelt beside him, her voice low. "Then tell me, Dakota, why hasn't it taken you?" For a long moment he was silent. Then he said, "Because I belong to it. It took my brother years ago, and I learned to listen instead of fight." She looked at him, seeing for the first time the loneliness that lived behind his calm. "You've lost someone too." He nodded. "We all have. The desert spares no heart." Evelyn's eyes drifted to the horizon. "Then maybe I can make it remember kindness for him, for you, for everyone who's lost something here." Dakota's voice dropped to a whisper. "Be careful what you offer. The desert keeps every promise made under its sky." A sudden gust of wind tore through the camp, scattering ash from the fire. Evelyn gasped and looked up. The flames had flared back to life, burning blue for a single heartbeat before dying again. Dakota rose swiftly. "It begins," he said. "The land answers to what stirs within it." Evelyn clutched the pocket watch, now faintly glowing, in her hand. "What's happening?" she whispered. Dakota looked toward the dark line of the canyon. "Your father's spirit has awakened something. The desert is remembering its debt." The air trembled, and somewhere far off, thunder rolled across the dunes, though no clouds touched the sky. Evelyn's heart pounded. "Then we have to go back." Dakota stared at her, knowing the risk, but seeing the same fire in her that burned in her father once. "Then we go," he said quietly. "But this time, we don't search for water. We search for what the desert took." As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, they rode once more toward the canyon, the desert whispering behind them like a living thing, hungry and waiting. The moon hung low over the desert, swollen and red as if it had drunk from the earth's sorrow. The Apache camp was quiet now, too quiet. Fires burned low, their smoke curling toward the stars. The wind whispered in the canyon, carrying the scent of sage and fear. Evelyn sat outside the medicine tent, wrapped in a hide blanket. The wound on her shoulder still burned where the arrow had grazed her, but it was nothing compared to the ache inside her chest. She clutched her father's pocket watch, cracked, still, but now faintly glowing in the moonlight. Koa, the Apache warrior who had saved her life again and again, stood nearby. His long black hair shimmered like a river of ink beneath the blood-red moon. His chest, scarred and strong, bore painted symbols that looked alive in the flickering light. His eyes never left her, not for a moment. "You are not safe here anymore," he said finally, his voice low and steady. "The spirits have spoken. The riders who came last night were scouts. More will come, soldiers, maybe outlaws. They seek something buried in this desert." Evelyn looked up, her lips trembling. "They're looking for me, aren't they? Or what my father found." Koa nodded once. "Your father sought the breath of the earth, a sacred spring. He found it, and it cursed him. You carry what remains of that power now." Evelyn's pulse quickened. "That's why I see him, why I feel like he's still here." Koa's dark eyes softened. "The dead linger when the living cannot let go." She swallowed hard, tears glistening on her cheeks. "Then help me let him go, Koa, please." He looked at her for a long time, then slowly knelt in front of her. From a leather pouch at his side, he drew out a small blade carved from obsidian and an eagle feather. "There is a way," he said, "but it is not easy. You must walk between worlds, the living and the dead. And I must walk with you." Evelyn hesitated. "Why would you risk that?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Because I already belong to both." Before she could speak, he sliced his palm and let the blood fall upon the desert sand. He handed her the blade. "Blood calls to blood. Cut your hand. Let the earth hear you." Her hand shook as she did it. A single drop of her blood mingled with his on the sand, and the ground seemed to hum beneath them. The moonlight grew brighter, redder, and suddenly everything around them changed. The camp dissolved into mist. The fires went out. The sound of the wind faded, replaced by whispers, countless voices speaking in the language of the dead. Evelyn gasped as she saw her father standing before her, his ghostly form flickering like a candle flame. "Father," she breathed. He looked at her with eyes full of regret. "Evelyn, my child, I never meant for you to suffer. The spring's power was not meant for us. You must end it before it consumes you." Evelyn reached toward him, but her hand passed through his form. "I don't understand how." Koa stepped forward, his expression solemn. "By giving it back. The spring gave life, it must take life in return." She turned to him, realization dawning. "You mean someone has to die?" Koa didn't answer, but his silence was enough. The vision began to fade, her father's image dissolving into light. Evelyn screamed, reaching out. Koa caught her as she fell, holding her against his chest. The earth trembled beneath them, the blood and the sand glowing faintly before disappearing. When the world returned, they were back at the camp. The fires had reignited on their own. The moon hung high again, its color fading from red to white. Evelyn looked up at Koa, her voice breaking. "You were willing to die for me." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "If it means you live free, then yes." She closed her eyes, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. For the first time since her father's death, she wasn't sure if the ache in her heart was grief or something deeper. As the dawn crept over the desert horizon, Koa stood guard beside her. The wind carried whispers from the canyon, and for a brief, fleeting moment, Evelyn thought she heard her father's voice say, "Live, my daughter. The desert has given you a second chance." And when she looked up, Koa was already walking toward the rising sun, his figure cast in golden light, part man, part myth. The first light of dawn spilled across the desert pale and gold, chasing away the blood-red hue that had haunted the night. The Apache camp stirred slowly to life, but the air carried a heaviness, a knowing silence that something sacred had shifted. Evelyn Shaw awoke by the embers of the fire, the scent of smoke and sage filling her lungs. Her hand reached for the pocket watch at her side. It no longer glowed. It was cold, lifeless metal again. The power was gone, and with it, her father's lingering spirit. She turned to where Koa had stood guard, but he was gone. Panic rose in her chest. She scrambled to her feet, scanning the horizon. The tracks in the sand were fresh. His footprints led toward the canyon where the breath of the earth slept beneath stone. "No," she whispered, her voice breaking. He wouldn't. But deep down she knew. Koa had always been a man between two worlds, the living and the dead, the human and the spirit. The ritual had bound them both, and now to restore balance, one life had to be given back to the desert. Evelyn grabbed a spear lying by the fire and started running. The desert sun was already climbing, fierce and merciless, but she didn't stop. The wind tore at her hair, the sand stung her face, and still she pressed on, driven by something stronger than fear. When she reached the canyon, the ground trembled under her feet. The sound of rushing water echoed through the stone walls, though no river had ever flowed there. Koa stood at the edge of the sacred pool. His body was painted in white clay, his chest bare and glistening with sweat, his black hair wild in the wind. The tribal jewelry he wore caught the sunlight like fire. He looked both ancient and eternal, a spirit reborn in flesh. She called out to him, her voice shaking. "Koa, don't do this." He turned slowly, his dark eyes calm and sad. "It is already done, Evelyn. The spring is awake. It calls for balance. You said I could live free," she cried. "Not at the cost of you." He smiled faintly. "Freedom always costs something. Your father paid with his life. Now it is my turn." She ran to him, clutching his arm. "No, we'll find another way. Please, Koa, don't leave me." "Not now." For a moment, he said nothing. The desert wind howled through the canyon, lifting dust and echoes of ancient chants. Then he gently placed his hand over hers. "You have already given me more than you know," he whispered. "You reminded me what it means to feel, to belong, even for a short while." The ground began to quake violently. The water of the spring glowed like molten silver, rising higher, swirling around them. Evelyn screamed as the sand split open, forming a deep crack that pulsed with light. Koa cupped her face in his blood-stained hands. "When you drink from the spring again, remember me. The desert will remember too." Before she could stop him, he stepped into the glowing water. The light engulfed him, burning white and blinding. Evelyn fell to her knees, shielding her eyes, tears streaming down her face. When the light faded, the pool was still. Koa was gone. All that remained was his turquoise necklace, floating on the surface like a memory. Evelyn reached out and took it in trembling fingers. The water beneath was cool, real water, pure and endless. The curse had been lifted. The spring flowed freely again. Days passed before she returned to the Apache camp. The tribe welcomed her as one of their own, for they knew the sacrifice made that day. The desert, once barren, began to bloom with small green shoots as if life had returned to the land itself. Evelyn would often walk to the canyon at dusk, wearing Koa's necklace close to her heart. The wind always seemed to whisper his name, carrying his spirit through the sands. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the world in red and gold, she knelt beside the water and whispered softly, "You kept your promise, Koa. I'm free. But I'll never forget." And for the briefest moment, the reflection in the spring shimmered, a strong, shirtless Apache warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, standing behind her with a faint, peaceful smile. Then he faded with the wind, leaving her bathed in light. The desert was silent again, but it no longer felt empty. It felt alive. And somewhere beyond the horizon, where the spirit world met the living, Koa watched the woman he had saved and loved walk into her new life beneath the endless western sky.